Hey, hello, everybody. Welcome back again to podcast 161 of the DanJohnUniversity.com podcast. I'm Dan John, and I've just come back from another great Perform Better workshop. I'm a little jet lagged. No, that's not true. Well, yeah, I got home really late last night, but I should be fine to answer questions. Remember, if you have questions, send them to podcast@DanJohnUniversity.com, and I'll be happy to answer them. Today we have a number of questions, and I think some of them are pretty good. Our first question is from Daniel. What a lovely name. How do you feel the jerk and press relate to each other? How could the jerk be used to improve the press and vice versa? Does this change if we're talking about kettlebell variations of lift versus barbell? Basically what I'm asking is that if you see it altering this lift is worth it if the goal is a big press. It's interesting because if you read Pavel's work, he quotes me exactly on this point. The upside as a jerk is that you can use more weight. And, and strangely, using more weight tends to make you stronger. Yes, please quote me on that. I did invent that. When I do jerks overhead, the lockout, the way the whole body has to come up, rise up, fight against it, you go joint on joint on the lockout, I think that makes you stronger. When you jerk, I mean, I've jerked a lot of weight. There's a video of me on Bigger, Faster, Stronger, jerking 385 for 5, which is 175 kilos for 5. And that's a lot of weight. So if you're throwing that kind of weight over your head, coming back and pressing 225 is pretty easy. The first time I pressed 300, I was kind of surprised because the weird thing is I'd been training on such a simple program. All I did was go heavy one day a week on the clean and press, and then 3 sets of 8 of 1 clean, 8 presses with a minute rest the other day. So just 2 days a week of pressing. But I think it really helped to have all those years under the barbell. So does press help jerk? I think so. I know I never competed in the military press in a competition. It had been out, for about 3 or 4 years when I started first Olympic lifting. They got rid of the press in the 72 Olympics. But I mean, everybody I knew who Olympic lifted had been pressers, and they said that, there's great value in the press. For one thing, everybody looked really good. If you want to look good, here. Clean and press 405, 180 kilos for a set of 8. When you finish that, you will look good. Okay, thank you. You're welcome. I know. Yeah. I think the press will help the jerk, and I think the jerk will help the press because there's more load. And anytime you add a dynamic capability, the body figures it out. Like the thing that Greg Cook taught me, where is if you hang from a pull-up bar and you hold here from a pull-up bar, the body will figure out the middle part. And I thought that was very true because I'd seen that with the clean and jerk. You ask about barbells versus kettlebells. Now with barbells, I know the two of them pair well together, like a fine Pinot Noir and a delicious just about anything else you eat. When it comes to kettlebells, that's why I think when we do the strong first or the RKC or the different certs that have the ballistic overheads, I think there's value to it, to teaching that. When I teach the RKC2, we're jerking within seconds. I mean, I don't take a lot of time because I like people to get, even if it's suboptimal loads, light loads, just getting that idea of the rhythm, the tempo, boom, boom. Boom, boom, that. I always say you jerk with your ears, because you want to hear the feet bang, hit that, bang. And if you stomp and a jerk, almost universally, you've locked your arms out correctly. I've taught for both companies, and most recently, of course, with the RKC, and it's one of my favorite parts to teach, and it's also probably my favorite way to get people tired at the certs. There's a value in having hard workouts at certs. I don't agree with all of it, but the one thing I do like is that when people get tired with the ballistic work, they stop thinking so much, and they stop. I get this question: where should my elbows be? And it's like, for God's sakes, if you can think about where your elbows are, you're not going to be very good. I always joke the elbows should be somewhere between the wrist and the shoulders. I mean, you're just snapping and locking out the weight. I talked to Dick Notmeyer yesterday. It was my birthday, so he called, and whenever I think of Dick and these, he used to always make us do these tiny press outs after every jerk. But the thing is that we got real solid about that boom lockout. So those little press outs, Dick called them press outs. So that's your bridge for me. The first step of the bridge would be you to help the jerk with the press. Every time you jerk, just do these little, I don't know how long that is, what, 3 to 8 inch little press outs. And what you can feel your scapula coming underneath, you can feel your body aligning things. And so, yeah, there's great value. If for most people who just want to look good, just doing presses would be all you really need. But if you want to get stronger, add those ballistic jerks so you can handle more load over time. And of course, the more load you use, the more time under tension and the more hypertrophy you should be seeing. Gosh, I hope that helps. So yes, I'm a big believer in using the jerk to help the press and using the press to help the jerk. How you get there is going to be a bit of a road. I suggest if you're using kettlebells to talk to somebody who knows what they're doing. And of course, if you're using the barbell, a few minutes with an Olympic lifter or even just watching a good Olympic lifter will give you most of your answers. Thank you. Good question. We have a question from Michael. How do you balance skill-based sports and strength and recovery? How much skill training should you give up to work on strength? And how do you know when to lay off strength and focus on skill? Well, so the first thing is your model has a problem. You went either or on me. So I see elite performance in that kind of that yin yang kind of thing. And I know yin yang is overused, but in this case, I like it a lot. And what I think of when I'm working with athletes is if you're a 12-year-old, your circle is going to be kind of small. And what I'm going to do is you show up with some innate strength just because that's the way it works, and you have a very, very basic technique. Well, let's just say the discus because that's the easiest for me. Once I teach you stretch, 1, 2, 3, and I teach you 3 ABC, and I teach you spanky and this and that, the X position and that. Well, it's a pretty simple. So that's a pretty simple technique, and we're on our way, and good things are happening. In the weight room, I'll have you do the Southwood program: power clean, military, front squat, and bench. And over time, what I want to do is increase your technical side and increase your strength side. So, over time, we're going to spend a lot more time thinking about arousal and training. There'll be a lot more situational stuff. What if you foul your first 2 throws? What are you going to do? There'll be a lot of technical ideas. It'll be fun. The problem is it's real easy to build the strength side and let the technical side drop. And in some sports, it's real easy to build the technical side and ignore the strength side. I like to think of the circle growing so that both the technical sports side and the strength side are growing together. So it means that, yeah, you probably have to learn the Olympic lifts. You probably have to learn the power lifts. You probably have to put a lot of weight on the bar. You probably have to learn to do hill sprints. You have to probably learn how to do sleds far more. There's going to be a lot of things you have to learn to do in the weight room. But at the same time, we're also doing a lot of, different drills to really build up this and that on your technical side. That's how I look at it. Now, you asked about recovery. And the truth is, on recovery, you do hit a certain stage as a performance athlete where you need to recover more and more and more, because the thin edge of high performance sports is such that doing anything at the competition numbers is exhausting. If you're an elite sprinter and you're running 900 meters, you need a lot more recovery than some high school kid running. Well, I remember we had a kid who thought he was fast. He ran a 16-second 100 meters. Oh my gosh. I mean, glacial. I didn't have the heart to tell him how bad he was. But it's a lot easier to recover from a 16-second 100 meters than it is from a 9.9. It's a lot easier to recover from a 200-pound clean and jerk than a 500-pound clean and jerk. That's all obvious. So what happens in a career is you got to kind of think of it this way. We're going to build the technical side and then the strength side and those qualities. And we're going to keep building that circle out and out and out and out and out. And then all of a sudden, the recovery, now you can get away with just sleeping 8 or 9 hours a night, eating reasonably intelligently, for a whole bunch of that early process in the youth development. But then there's going to become a time where you can't just rely on the simple stuff. You're going to have to get a lot more elegant with your nutritional interventions, anywhere from restricting certain macronutrients on certain days to overdosing them on other days, literally dosing them on other days. The use of things like caffeine, and of course I'm just thinking out, but I've got a sauna right there. I've got those magic the vibrating gun, all that stuff. The vibrating gun and foam rolling is really nice if you have your 12-year-old do them, but frankly, they don't really need any high-end tools. Now, learning how to use them probably has value, but once you get that circle to a certain size, so you're an elite performer, you probably aren't going to keep pushing the technical side and the arousal side, the mental side, very much farther. And you're probably not really, once you bench 400, snatch 250, clean 300, you're strong enough to be an elite thrower. And obviously, some throwers do much, 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 much more than that. But what we want to focus on then is, can I recover from those workouts? When I was training, and I would have those days where I'd only do six snatches or 3 or 5 clean and jerks, but the load was so massive. Those workouts might take 40 minutes to do. I mean, seriously, those workouts, 5 clean and jerks might take me 45 minutes, including warm-ups and all the other stuff. But because you can't just clean and jerk, like at the time, 165 kilos, 363 pounds. You clean and jerk that, you put that weight down, you sweat. You're talking about a 3-4 second effort, and you drop the bar and you're like, you're sweating like a pig. So your recovery changes in this very elegant way. So the lower you are on the performance ladder, the less you have to focus on those big details. Supplements for a 15-year-old are almost no value at all. Supplements for a 25, 30-year-old athlete, an athlete who's been focusing on one sport for 17, 18 years. Supplements then make more sense to me. Playing with macronutrients makes more sense to me. Napping makes more sense to me. So that would be, it's a good question, Michael, but that would be the key. The other thing too is, when you're working with a 15-year-old athlete, his or her off-season might be playing another game. When you're working with an elite performer, you might want to send them on a 6-week all-inclusive, beach vacation and beg them not to do anything physical, just let everything kind of just, interesting. When you do take off time as an elite athlete, you actually very often hurt more than you do the rest of the year. Some of it could just be, of course, you're this balloon of stress and you pop it, the season's over and it's all gone. But we've actually had some other thoughts, is that when I'm in a high shape, we used to call it tonus, I don't know where that word went. But if my pecs, I've been, doing a lot of bench presses, when I take this 6-week vacation, my body says, okay, we're not needing this anymore. And, your pec muscles or whatever muscles they are, they shrink down a little bit. Of course, as they shrink, they pull on the tendons and ligaments more. You actually get a little bit out of alignment. It's like your car. If you put, I don't know, if you put high-end bicycle tires on your car and drive around, I'm sure you could figure out a way to do it. but you're going to have alignment issues when you corner with your normal car and bicycle tires. In the same way, if you put your car tires on your bicycle, you're probably going to have a lot more traction, but you're going to have a hard time going up a hill. So I just kind of see that as, that's the way I kind of explain with my athletes, the importance that the systems all tie in together. When you finished a year or a career and you have this elite stuff going on, it takes a while to kind of readjust yourself down. And of course, after that 6 weeks all-inclusive beach vacation, you show up and fresh and alive and really excited about getting out there. And we start getting you back in the weight room and doing the good things. Thank you. Good question. Hope it helped. We have a question from Ricky. And it's a bodybuilding question. And so I'm not really very good at this. Why do people train higher reps for certain muscles like delts and calves? High rep calf work has been around a long time because the bodybuilders of the 60s and 70s believed that they were a different kind of muscle. In truth, I got some friends up in Clearfield. They have world-class calves, and they've never done a calf raise in their life. I think calf raises are the most, of all the body parts in the body, they're the most DNA'd. I have lovely calves, and I never do anything for them. The high rep thing is just a theory from the 60s. Arnold and those guys, Frank Zane, they all believe that. I've never heard actually delts being high rep exercises, but let's continue the question for Ricky. We train around 5 rep generally for strength in most lifts. Why then don't people do 5s generally for things like lat raise? I haven't done a lat raise since Richard Nixon was president of the United States, so I don't know. Calf raises, I don't think I've done a calf raise. Probably in the 80s I did some when I was helping one of our American football players who asked me to do some with him. Bicep curls, yeah, if you want big arms, do sets of 5. That's the Reg Park system. Why do people usually go for high reps for calf raises? Again, and there's no best practice to say do 5 by 5 on calf. So, Ricky, it's a strange question to ask me because this is not my world. I think if you're doing lateral raises, if you have a good reason to do them, like you're working with somebody who's broken, that's great. But I don't take them very seriously. Just snatch body weight and clean and press body weight, and you're not going to worry about any of that stuff. So, not a great question. There's a bunch of traditions in our field that have no long-term value at all. Okay, so I know I didn't do a great question with this, but thanks for asking. And just remember, in my world, you get big and strong and fast by lifting big weights fast. Thanks. We have a question from Noah. And Noah says, I've been fascinated by upper back strength. Everyone from old-time strongmen, Olympic lifters and powerlifters, has crazy strong upper backs, even if it's not the main focus of their training. And you've already answered your question. Strongmen, Olympic lifters, and powerlifters all pick up really heavy weights off the ground. That's your answer. I mean, it's right there. The best exercise to look freakishly large in the upper back is to pick big weights off the ground. Now, you can look good focusing on pull-ups. You can. But if you have somebody who can do 50 pull-ups and someone who can deadlift 700 pounds and you have them, face this way with their shirts off, you can see the difference between a big deadlifter, big Olympic lifter, and somebody who can do a lot of pull-ups. If you had to pick a one-stop shop exercise for just the upper back to get really strong, the same way bench press is the upper body push, I don't agree with that. I think it's military. What would you pick? Deadlift. Rack deadlift. Massive amounts. The best exercise for the upper back is picking big weights up off the ground. When you see somebody who's got massive traps, that's the biggest one, that weird big lat that you get from deadlifts, it is unforgettable. Okay, Luke has a question. How would you structure a program to reach 100 push-ups in a single set? Boy, that's an interesting question because that was the test we had to do in high school. And I remember Barry Mamini and I both doing it. There's a couple of simple answers. We used to talk about this all the time in high school because it was a big deal when I was in high school. Doing 100 push-ups and extended set was a big deal. I now have a whole bunch of parameters I put around push-ups, like, we now do them when you bring your chest to the ground, you put your hands off into a T, put your hands back on the ground, push up, and that's one. Just because people cheated so much on push-ups. But what we discovered is that doing sets of 100 is probably a test day thing. What we did, and I learned this from Tony Martin, is what we did was more like sets. Now, okay, let's just pretend for a second. You got to be able to do at least 25 push-ups before we can even have the conversation about getting to 100. It's like you got to run a 5K before I'm going to have a conversation about a marathon. You got to run a 10K before I'm going to have a conversation with a marathon. You just need some time doing the push-up. We did variations of push-ups all the time. Honestly, the one I think was best, and now I call it crocodile push-ups. This is a great variation to get your push-up numbers up. But when I say tick, you do a push-up. So tick. And then talk, you move a hand. So tick, one push-up. Talk. Tick. Talk. Tick. Talk. Tick. Now, my feet are coming up underneath me. So it's like doing a planked bear crawl where every time you move your hand, you do a push-up. And what's nice about that is that instead of just doing push-ups with your hands in the one spot, is you get a great amount of movement. Now, it's easier for me to coach it than to explain it. It's one of those kinds of things. But every time I say tick, you do a push-up. Every time I say talk, you do you move a hand. It doesn't matter how you do it, right? It doesn't matter. And they're called tick-tock push-ups and crocodiles. And a lot of people don't get the joke, but that's a Peter Pan joke, okay? Tick-tock push-ups are a great way to get a lot of volume and even some health. Now, one small thing, make sure you hang before and after these workouts just to get those shoulders feeling good again. Well, with Tony Martin, we would do these things where I go, you go with 20 to 25 push-ups, and we try to get our volume up. But it needs to be that. So the 100 push-ups is much more like a 10K than a max bench press, if you follow. There's a lot of local muscular endurance you need to have. So I would say the best way you can do it is, one, have a friend who's just as crazy as you are and go, I go, you go. You could probably work it out pretty simply into some system like we're to do sets of 5 today. I go, you do 5, I do 5, you do 5, I do 5, you do 5, I do 5. And just really try to get up and keep count somehow how you do that. Wait a day or 2 or 3, pardon me, and maybe do that with 10s. I go, you go, I go, you go for 10s. And then build up to the point that you're probably getting the sets of 20 or sets of 25. Yeah, I don't know if it matters, but you want to make sure you get around 200 reps on those. So if you're doing 20s, for example, that would be, you're going to be doing 10 rounds of I go, you go. And it's interesting. Do you notice how tight those, so your partner's push-ups is your rest period. So I'm doing 20. I don't know how long that takes, but somewhere between 20 seconds would be fast. But let's say 40 seconds to a minute would be reasonable, though it can be a lot shorter than that, obviously. So my rest period is quite narrow. And so I'm barely even dealing with the waste products as we go. And that's one of the things you have to do. What we noticed when we did the test for PE class, physical education class, everybody can get to around 60, but to go from 60 to 80, we said this fun thing after, we try to take your elbows and put them together and you just cramp everywhere. It's kind of a funny thing to do, your friends. But to get to 100, you have to get yourself, and when you do a practice run, just pop to the floor maybe every 3 weeks and just see what you can do. You'll notice that you're probably, no matter what you do, you're good for 20 to 50 reps if you've been training this, and you can do, the those higher volume days of say 200 push-ups, you'll probably get to 50. And then what you'll notice is probably from reps 50, I mean, literally 51 to 60, you'll notice that the stress and the strain really adds up. And you need to practice powering your way through that. We weren't allowed to lay down, but we were allowed to rest by getting in the up push-up position and taking a hand off. What we discovered is that resting with the one hand on the ground actually just took reps away from us. It was much better rest here so that we didn't put all the pressure on one side. Rest here and just power through. What you're going to find probably the first time, you're probably getting into the 80s before a really weird kind of failure hits you. And then once you've done that once, maybe twice, and you know what you're looking for, you'll be able to get to those 100. I've had a lot of high school athletes do the 100 push-up challenge. We had a couple of challenges along those lines. And very, very rarely after one person did not a whole bunch more people do it. So one of the things is important on this is just a human nature thing. When I see you do the 100, I might even be able to do 110 or 120 after seeing you do 100. And that just seems to be the way they always say it's about Roger Bannister in the 4-minute mile. Once he did it, all of a sudden everybody broke it, which isn't necessarily true. It's not actually what happened. But once you go through that, once you see someone do that test, it becomes a lot more believable. And you also, even if you don't consciously know, you're actually watching the mistakes they're making and you're fixing up the small things in your head. It's fun to do it, and good luck to you on that, okay? Thank you. We have a question from Jeffrey with a J, not a G. Over the years during your podcast, you have talked about your walking gait, or more correctly, that you actually hired someone to help you do it. Please elaborate. Well, it was a mistake. It was $300 for a 45-minute session, and it was a total waste of time. Absolute total waste of time, and to the point that I don't even want to mention the person's name. Very unprofessional. I showed up 10 minutes late, and she was in her office, and oops, I gave you too much information there. Still charged me full price. Say that supposed to start at 9. She didn't come out until 9:20. We went probably half an hour and said, yeah, that's it. Just walk, just push. I'm 59 years old, been training hard with kettlebells for 10 years, and I'm noticing some changes in my walking gait. Just curious what you did to optimize and or correct any issues you might have had. Well, okay, so having a specialist see me didn't help, but a couple of things we're doing will help you a lot. One, I'll give you 3 pieces of advice that have helped me more than hiring somebody. First, and this comes all the way back from Irving Dardick's work back in the 80s, and this is what they taught. In fact, I heard this the first time, I think it was a sophomore in college, and they called it the Bulgarian warm-up. But when it's possible for you to do this, start incorporating some high knee, either running or marching in place. High knee marching in place really is a wonderful feedback loop on how everything else is going. So if you're marching in place, a lot of people I notice, when that knee comes up, they try to catch it with their upper body. So instead of being tall, they do this on every single lift. This is their belt here. Every single belt buckle, every single belt, they come down. Well, you want to have enough mobility, flexibility, and that weird, I hate to call it core strength, but because it's actually a series of muscles, but to bring those knees high. I like when I do my high knee work to have my toes coming up the whole time. So I'm pulling up with my toes. Marching in place or going outside and doing some high knee running just like you did when you were probably in high school sports of some kind. Great value. The next one is butt kickers. Now these are exercises, okay? These are exercises that I think will help most people's gait. The next one is called butt kickers. You can, the way I recommend it with most older clients is either hold a chair, a rail, a pole, something, and stand in place. And at first, go slowly. Your right heel comes up, kicks your right butt cheek. You bring it to the ground, left heel kicks left butt cheek. And then you try to speed it up so it goes thump, 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 thump. Interesting, because most people, when they march in place with high knees, do this. Lots of people, when they do butt kickers, start to reach back like this. I'd like you to be as tall as you can in both of these. If you can, go out on the street, go out to the park, and do some of those butt kickers. You probably only need, let's just say, 3 bouts of high knee running, 3 bouts of butt kickers. You probably only need about, I don't know, say 40 yards, 40 meters. It doesn't have to be very far to get the benefits. And then the last one is either walking backwards or back, what we call in America, backpedaling. That's that backward sprint movement. Now, I'm not going to say any of these cure cancer, but the thing I like about the backward backpedaling is that if you have a strange gait, when you walk backwards, you'll see it. If you walk with your like this, your feet are out. As you walk backwards, you'll see it, and it's easy to correct it. There's values that it makes your knees feel, by the way, these all make your knees and hips feel better. So, first level of improving your gait, high knee, butt kickers, and the backpedaling, especially if you can go fast. I find that very helpful. You're actually doing those as exercises. Next thing, I just got off a trip, so I think I have one in here. Whenever I travel and every day in our gym, we put these Perform Better mini. Oh, this is, yeah, I actually did put a fresh new one in there. Good. So this is a new one. It's real tight. You put this around your socks, and there's a couple of things I'd like you to think about doing. First is walking forward, but drive your heels apart as you walk. They're sometimes called monster walks. I have no issue with that. I think it's much more, no. There's a ton of value in walking forward. I would say there's a lot of shocking value with walking backwards. And if I can add the thing that I want you to do is walk backwards up hills. Now I didn't say Mount the Himalayas. I didn't say K2. It doesn't have to be much of a hill and you have to go far. But if you're doing those mini bands and you're walking backwards up a hill, you're going to wake up. There's areas of your glutes that just get completely ignored all the time. So advice here. One, try the high knee, the butt kicker, and backwards as kind of a tonic up to 3 times a week. Most people would recommend twice, just to keep everything moving and feeling good. Number 2, mini bands to actually build that localized strength. That what I'm doing right now, the sitting's fine. However, too much of it just makes things fall asleep. And the last thing is the most technical of all, is it has to be done without you knowing it. But if you could get someone to video you walking, it doesn't have to be highly scientific, and what you're looking for. When I was young, we were taught that the certain tribes, and I think it was the Iroquois, didn't call the settlers this or that. They called them crooked feet because the settlers, when they would walk on the paths, walk like this. I don't know what the reason, I don't know why they did. The idea was you should walk like this. And one of the things we utilize, like when we do farmer walks or suitcase carries, is we put a line on the ground, and it's called the Johnny Cash. You walk the line. And what's interesting is if I put a 24-kilo bell in your right hand, many people can't walk the line if it's just a suitcase carry, just one hand, because they have a waddle in their walk, and that will show them. What I want you to do with the video, and this I don't think is a terrible idea, but video yourself doing a suitcase carry on a line. Don't have to lose your mind about how long or anything. And then the second thing, if you can get someone to video you naturally just walking, not when you're trying to walk perfectly. And this segues into the last point, which is an asterisk, it's an additional thing. When I started putting ankle weights around my ankles, mine are 5 pounds and they're neon. The very first thing I picked up on was how it improved my gait. Now I have titanium hips because of this birth condition called pistol grip hips. But because of all those years, I had, protecting my hips, I had this waddle that I had when I walked. Adding the ankle weights and doing the toolkit I just told you corrected all that. So, by the way, this is not medical advice. This is what worked for me, fixing the same problem, and I sure hope that helped, Jeffrey. When I walk now, I noticed this last night in the airport, I walk really fast when I can, and my feet are directly straight ahead, and I walk straight. If you go to the Salt Lake City airport, most people don't know how to walk in a line anymore. They don't walk straight, partially because they're looking at their phones, and they also waddle for a lot of reasons. So you got a waddling phone watcher, and they walk like this, in the terminal, and I straight past them. And that's how I did it. And Jeffrey, if you can get anything out of that, good. Well, that was an easy day today. I hope that helped. I love my podcast. Remember, if you have questions, you send them to podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. I love answering these questions. These were good ones today. And until next time, I'm Dan John. And let's all keep on lifting and learning. Thank you.